Hello, and welcome. I'm Dave Williams, and today I'm here to talk to you at the Kelby One Travel Photography Conference, all about Xencelabs, an incredible graphics tablet. Who am I though? Just to give you an introduction, my name is Dave Williams, as I said, as always, and I am a Kelby One instructor. I'm teaching 2 classes at this conference. I'm a Photoshop World instructor. I write Scott Kelby's blog every Tuesday. It's Travel Tuesdays with Dave. That's this guy. And I also write for other websites and blogs, including DIY Photography, teach with other places like Expert Photography, and write for magazines like Photo magazine. But here's the thing, I'm a travel photographer and I live in a van. It's not going to be forever, but at the moment I'm enjoying it, and you're joining me here in my van. It's a Mercedes Sprinter, a 2011 Mercedes Sprinter that I converted myself. It's a tall roof, extra long wheelbase, which means I've got a double bed right there. I'm sitting at my desk right here, and the driver's seat is just on the other side of this wall. I've been traveling around in this van, around the Arctic, around continental Europe, having a great time. I'm pretty sure I've been to 26 countries. I definitely need to double check that. In the year that I've been traveling, exploring and living in this van. The van's called Coffee Fernweh. Coffee is the Icelandic word for cabin, and Fernweh is the German word for wanderlust. German because it's a Mercedes, Icelandic because it's my favourite country in the world. And so I slammed those 2 words together to make up the name Coffee Fernweh. So that's a brief look at who I am, what I do, where you'll find me, and if you wanted to find me on any social media, if you don't follow me already, you can look for iDaveWilliams or go to idavewilliams.com. So as I said though, today I'm here to talk to you about Xencelabs. Xencelabs produces a range of incredible graphics tablets. I've got one right here in front of me, and we're going to have a look at this one and the smaller one in a lot of detail in a minute. But firstly, I want to explain why it's so important for me to have such an incredible tool. And it is an incredible tool. I'm going to give you loads of reasons why. I'm going to give you a demo of what you can do with this thing. But it is an incredible tool. Now, as photographers and designers and all kinds of creatives, we need to have a way that we can work effectively, that we can work in a really refined and really tuned way that speaks to us as photographers and as creatives. And I'm going to make a reference here to Mac and Apple's versus regular laptops. Now, and this is from Scott Kelby himself. When we look at Macs as creatives, as designers, as photographers versus regular Windows normal laptops, there's a reason we go for them as designers, because we have this creativity and we have this certain taste that comes with what we do and the way our brain works and the way we see the world, and we see it through the perfection that we find in things. And when somebody asked Scott once, why do you have a Mac rather than a laptop? And he turned it upside down, where it was clean, there were no stickers, there were no ports and big screws, it was just as clean on the bottom as it was on the top. And he said that's why. Because the design and the thought that goes into it speaks to us as creatives, it speaks to us as photographers. Whereas if you turn a normal laptop over, you're going to find all kinds of stickers and ports and notches and bumps, and it's a mess. It doesn't speak to us properly and effectively as the creatives that we are. So when I look at Xencelabs tablets, graphics tablets, I see the same thing. I see design that's been thought through. It's been engineered deliberately, intentionally, to speak to us as creatives and as designers, as photographers. And rather than a lot of the competitors where there are odd niggly bits that get in the way or that don't perform well or that aren't aesthetically pleasing as well as incredibly functional, Xencelabs is just smooth and pretty and perfect, and it does its job exactly the way it's supposed to. So when I say this, I'm going to just pick up the medium tablet here and I'm going to show you exactly what I mean. So you'll see on the drawing area here in the middle, all the way around the edge, there is a seam, but there's no gap. And I don't know about you, but when I'm busy editing and retouching photos and working on videos using my Xencelabs tablet, I like to have a snack. And those crumbs from the snacks fall into the edges of a lot of the competitors' tablets, but there is no gap for them to fall into. Similarly, when we look at the design, you can see on this side where my arm would rest, it slopes down. And this is a slight drop, but it's just the right drop to be comfortable. When I'm working with the pen or the pencil on the tablet, this drop makes a huge difference. It makes it comfortable, and it shows that they've designed this with full intention. As creatives, as photographers, they've made a fantastic product from the look of it, but also from the feel of it. So looking back at a Mac looks good compared to a laptop, a Xencelabs tablet looks good compared to the competitors. But not only that, when we open up the box and pull out the pen, this is going to sound crazy. Just bear with me for a second. When we pull out that pen and start to write and draw, it feels good. It's hard to explain, but it feels good. There's just the right amount of texture and just the right amount of friction in the surface of this Xencelabs tablet with the pen that's writing on it. And if we want a little bit more, we can change to one of the felt nibs that's included in this box. Not only do we have the 3-button stylus or the 3-button pen, we have a thinner 2-button pen, more like a pencil. It's comfortable, it does its job, and that little notch at the end where there's a slight incline and a slight drop off, it makes it a nice experience working on a graphics tablet. And that's something I've found difficult in the past. I've gone through countless Wacom tablets, I've spent a lot of money on them, and they've always failed. They've always not lived up to the task that they're supposed to achieve. The performance that they're supposed to have just hasn't quite been there. And the design and the aesthetics and the consideration that's gone into this product is one of the reasons why. This one performs so much better compared to Wacom tablets or compared to any other competitors. Part of the technology that's involved in this, with the wireless connectivity, is owing to the Bluetooth. As far as I'm aware, Wacom uses Bluetooth 4.1. They might have upgraded slightly, but they're still in the 4 point something region. Whereas Xencelabs uses Bluetooth 5, which gives us a stronger and more secure connection. There's no glitches, there's pure stability. All the time the connection doesn't drop out, it doesn't lag, it's a perfect connection. And to achieve this, there's a small dongle that plugs in to your USB or USB-C port, which I'm just going to pull out here. This dongle is what gives us the connectivity to our laptop or to our computer from the Xencelabs tablets. This Bluetooth 5 connection means that we can be in a room full of other Bluetooth connections, other graphics tablets, other devices using Bluetooth, and we're not going to get any interference. We're going to have that strong connection that we need. The fact that it's wireless, running off this Bluetooth connection, makes me consider things like battery life. I've always had a problem with battery life when I've used other tablets in the past. Now, if we plug in the graphics tablet itself, the medium tablet, it takes 2 hours to charge, all the way up to a 16-hour use time. And something we're going to look at a little bit more in detail is the quick keys. And the quick keys take 1.5 hours to charge, up to 53 hours of use time, which is fantastic. I'll be quite honest, I haven't charged the quick keys yet, and I've had these since April this year. And I haven't had to charge the quick keys at all, using this all the time. The battery life is incredible. So Xencelabs offers a medium, which is the one I'm talking about and showing you right now, but they also offer a small, which is perfect for me here in the van, or when I'm on the move and I need to pack incredibly light, going through an airport or working in a cafe or a restaurant or something like that. The small tablet is simply in a smaller package. It comes in this pouch, and it includes the same pen nibs and USB dongle that comes in the medium tablet in a much smaller package. There we are for comparison. It's the size of my hand, but it still gives us the same working area at 16 by 9 that we get from the medium. On both models, as well as having a 3-button pen, there are 3 buttons on the top of the tablet itself. And these 3 buttons can be turned off if you don't want to use them, or you can customize them to do whatever function you want them to do. When we're charging this device, the connection is at the top in the middle, and so it goes away from us, which means we can place it on the left or right, whichever side of the laptop or computer we want to. And it also means that we've got some flexibility because it's wireless. When we're charging, if we need to work while we charge, we can do so. So let's dive into my laptop and take a look at the Xencelabs interface and see what this thing can do and how we can customize it. So firstly, I'm working with the tablet here. And a piece of advice I want to give you if you're new to using a graphics tablet is to try and use it as often as possible and try not to touch the keyboard or the trackpad or the mouse, so that you get used to how everything works, how the cursor moves around the screen, and experience just general use of your graphics tablet. So you can see here that I've got my quick keys connected and I've got my pen tablet connected with the battery states underneath, and it's also telling me it knows there's a 3-button pen and a thin pen. So if we go into the pen tablet, what we can do here is it shows us on the corners our working area. On the Xencelabs tablets, we have a 16:9 ratio, which almost exactly replicates my MacBook Pro screen. It's a very good representation. I'm just going to point out that the Wacom tablets use a 16:10, and the reason I find that interesting is because if you were to draw a circle on the Xencelabs tablets, you will get a circle. But if you were to draw a circle on a Wacom tablet, you'll get an ellipse. The screen ratio is just not quite right. So let's have a look around here. The working area is lit. The working area is lit. On the tablet itself, we have lights in the corner showing us the working area of the screen, or the usable area of the graphics tablet, sorry. And we can change the colors of these lights from the options that we have here, and we can make them darker, brighter, or turn them off. So you'll notice at the top here, I have a load of applications, and at the moment, Lightroom Classic is the one that's selected. What I want to do is make it blue, so I know that when my tablet is blue, I'm working with Lightroom Classic. So I just tap on this blue here, and now that setting is locked in. If I go to Adobe Illustrator, you'll notice I've got it set to orange to represent the color of the logo. Adobe Photoshop, also blue, but I've gone for the darker blue. And in Premiere, I've gone for green. Unfortunately, there's no purple available. InDesign, I've got it pink. So basically, based on the color of the corners of the working area of the Xencelabs tablet, I know which application I'm working with and working in. So I mentioned the 3 buttons at the top of the graphics tablet. In here, we can choose what each one does. So I've got my left one set up to launch the Xencelabs settings. If I close this down and press the left button, it opens the settings for Xencelabs. In the middle one, I've got adjust pressure. We can look at adjust pressure in here, but whenever I'm working in an application and my pressure isn't just exactly how I want it to be, I can press that middle button and change the pressure of the pen or the thin pen, whichever one I'm working with. And we can switch the display if I'm connected to another device with the button on the right. We can set these to do anything we want. We can even set them to do a custom keystroke. So let's say I'm working with Adobe Photoshop and I want the right button to zoom out. If I'm zoomed into a photo performing some edits, I want it to zoom out to the fit in view, which I know is Command 0 or Control 0. So I'm going to type in fit in view as the name of my shortcut, and the keystroke key is Command 0. I type that in and it's locked in there. If I make a mistake and I hit back, it records the backspace as a command, so I would need to clear the field and do Command 0. Lock it in with OK, And now I can set custom, let's go here, custom commands, and now I can set custom commands to various other applications. So here's my Photoshop option, fit in view, Command 0 is my right button. We'll look quickly at the 3-button pen because I talked about the pressure, so we'll come into here and look at the 3-button pen, and we'll see it shows us a representation of the pen, and we can now customize the buttons as well as the eraser at the top of the pen itself. So if I want to undo whilst I'm working in Photoshop, I can tap the top of the 3 buttons, and it is currently Command Z, which is undo in Photoshop. The middle button is set to double click and the bottom button is set to right click. And again, we can change this to any of these predetermined options, or we can set our own custom keystroke, just like we did with the buttons at the top of the tablet. So the pressure, let's come on to that quickly. The pen pressure can be set to soft and heavy and 7 variants thereof. I like to have mine towards the heavy end because I make it, to me, it feels more like a true representation of what a pen does. I'm going to click into the advanced settings, and you can see here where it puts us on the scale. On the right hand side we've got a representation of heavy pressing to light pressing. So with this one, if I'm just gently touching the tablet, nothing happens. I have to apply some pressure to get a thin line, and I have to really push down to get a heavy line. To test whether I want this to be the setting that I use, it's interesting that we always write our name, isn't it? I can use this little notepad down in the corner, and I can test heavy versus light and see if that's the one I want. Let's clean that up. Dave. Always write our name, it's so weird. Give us a pen and a piece of paper. So let's just compare that to soft. Now, this is just the same pressure I was applying before. I'm getting a much thicker line. Change it back to the setting I liked. Same pressure, we're getting a thinner line. So that's where I want it to be, and we can change this ourselves to customize it, not only for our general use, the global function up here, but for each specific app. So if I want to be applying more pressure when I'm working in Illustrator than I am when I'm working in Photoshop, I can do that right here. So this is the eraser. We can do the same thing with the pressure. When I turn the pen upside down, I can test the eraser here, and it's very fine. Let's do it again, but pressing quite hard. I'm going to just adjust it slightly in each direction, so we're getting a much thicker line there. I think I like it right in the middle. When I press hard, I get a big chunk, and when I press lightly, I only rub out a little bit. So I'm happy with that. Then we've got the pen tilt sensitivity. This pen works at great angles. If I slide this up, we can have it more sensitive to those extreme angles. So if I'm used to drawing and I'm working in Illustrator and I'm shading, with my pen almost horizontal, I still can using this tablet. I'm going to set it back to normal because that's what I'm used to. When we go into the thin pen, we have the same options, but we have 2 buttons instead of 3. We can change the pen pressure with the same options that we had before. And I'm doing it here in Photoshop. We can also change the settings globally or specific to any other app. So how do we change it in other apps? These are the apps that Xencelabs has recognized that I work with, that I have installed on my MacBook Pro, but I can add others if I want to add specific functions and specific commands to other apps. By hitting this plus in the corner, I can find the app in this list, or I can browse all of my apps and add a specific one. See, there's a lot of versions of Adobe software there. Let's say I wanted to customize my pens for Xencelabs Luminar Neo. I've selected it, I add next. I can copy application profiles from other settings that I've created myself, or I can copy the global settings. So I'm going to add it with the global settings, and in our list now we have Xencelabs, and we can customize the pen, the tablet and the quick keys. So let's get on to what the quick keys are and what they do. So with our medium tablet bundle and the medium SE tablet bundle, or as an extra if we're buying just the tablet or the small tablet, we have these quick keys. It's basically designed to look like a remote control, but to be extremely functional and to help us to get our hand off that keyboard, to put this wherever we want, and to use these 8 buttons and this rotating dial and this button in the middle to perform extra functions. We can customize these buttons. There are 8 of them, and we have 5 available banks of customization, which gives us 40 possibilities. We can have 40 custom commands on here. Just like when we were looking at customizing our pen, our sensitivity, and how the pen and the buttons on the tablet itself work for each specific app, as well as globally, we can program these to work app specific or globally as well. The screen itself that the buttons are aligned up with is an OLED display, which means it's bright and it's clear and it's easy for us to see. We can use it in the dark or in the daylight, and we can see it just as well in either situation. They're designed, as well as, like I said earlier, they're wireless. We can get up to 53 hours of use out of this when it's fully charged. It's designed for comfort as well. The ergonomics in this entire system are incredible. The pen feels good, the graphics tablet feels good, and using the quick keys feels good. When we set it in the app, we can rotate where we have it on our desk. I have mine in this orientation, so I've got it in my left hand, all the buttons on my left fingers, and the dial at the end by my thumb. The quick keys essentially allow us to optimize our workflow. They allow us to work more effectively without putting in any more work ourselves. It feels natural. It's a thing that you get used to, just like when you get used to scrolling through your phone. You get used to how it works, you get used to the mechanics and the effectiveness of this system, and it works incredibly well for us as photographers and as creatives. Because we've got this bright OLED screen, which is labelled, we don't have to remember what each shortcut does. We can, but we can also just glance down and see what the command is. And we can cycle through each of the commands with the button on the left here. So if I press it, I'm jumping to the next set. If I press it again, I'm jumping to the next set. And I'm cycling through the 5 sets, A, B, C, D, and E, and then back to A again, to get to the functions that I want based on the work I'm doing and the program I'm using. So let's dive back into my screen now, and we'll take a look at how to set the quick keys up the way we want to, app specifically or globally, for what we need to achieve from them. So I press the left button on my tablet, which I know will take me to my Xencelabs program. And if I go to my quick keys or tap on the quick keys picture, we can see a representation of my quick keys, of the sets that I mentioned, and we have the programs available at the top as well. So let's start with the dial. The dial over here rotates, and it has a button in the middle. We have various modes that we can set, and we can set the color so that we know which mode we're in. We can set the sensitivity of the dial so that it's more or less responsive depending on how much we scroll, and we can determine what it's actually doing, whether it is scrolling or zooming, whether it's rotating, or whether we're putting in another custom keystroke like we did before. If we cycle through the modes, we can see what they're doing. So I'm going to come back out and I'm going to go to the global options. And globally, we go from scroll to zoom to rotate to a keystroke, which is the equivalent of increasing or decreasing the size of a brush in Adobe Photoshop. So that's perfect. That's exactly what I want it for. We can see that we're changing color. So we've gone orange, red, yellow to green before we go back to the start again. And we can rename the modes or turn the modes off, so we can go through less modes if we need to. If we have a situation where we don't need 4 modes, we only need 3, we can turn one of them off specific to an app. You can see the sets that I mentioned before, the 5 sets that we can again turn on and off by selecting and then enabling them right here. But we can also copy the sets and paste from a different configuration. So if I've set myself up with something in InDesign that I want to copy over and use the same configuration in Illustrator, I can copy from one, select the other app and paste into the next one. You can see what the quick keys do and what label they carry with them as well. So number 1 up here is undo, and what it does is a custom keystroke of Command Z. When we're looking at all of these options that we have, as I said, there are 40 programmable options. Between the 8 buttons and the 5 sets, we can program up to 40 different commands that we do or that we use as photographers or as creatives, so that they're right there in our hand. We click the left button and it cycles through them. And we, as you can see, I've deactivated 3 of them for this example and the global options. And if we go into Photoshop, you can see, get ready for the Kelby One Travel Photography Conference. So the way I did this is just to demonstrate that we can have our custom keystroke set and set the name as well. So I typed get as the name, the label that will appear on the quick keys, and I've just put an A, a B, a C and a D to get all the way through. And it worked perfectly and lines up as get ready for the Kelby One Travel Photography Conference with the 8 words and the 8 quick keys. So let's get back into the screen and we're going to open an image using Adobe Camera Raw that I'm going to take into Photoshop. This is a photo of the van that I'm currently sat in, Coffee Fernweh, in the Faroe Islands. You can see that when I go across the tablet, I'm going across the entire screen from edge to edge and from top to bottom. As I said before, I'm just going to reiterate, this is representative of the screen. We're getting a 16:9 representation of my 16:9 screen. So everything fits perfectly and wherever I move is natural and does exactly what it's supposed to do. What I would intuitively do if it were a piece of paper that I was drawing onto. So let's quickly run through this photo. We're going to open it up and edit it. We're going to deal with a few things. Let's just do some Photoshop tips at the same time. So always click on auto and see what you get. And the reason that I like to do this is because there was a time when we clicked auto and it was a terrible idea. Nothing looked right. There were just all kinds of things wrong with the image. But now when we click auto, thanks to Adobe Sensei and the machine learning and the artificial intelligence that's driving everything based on millions of pieces of data input into it, we're now getting a much better representation of what an image should look like if we click auto. So I always click auto first to see what it looks like. I'm going to very quickly sort out, there we go, the chromatic aberration, and I'm going to use a profile correction to remove that vignetting and the distortion that I'm getting from the lens. First thing I'm going to do in every case, because if there's going to be a vignette, I want to be the one to put it on. I'm going to make sure everything lines up and looks right and make sure we've got a level horizon. It looks good to me. And I'm going to check the white balance again. I'm going to click auto and see what we get. Moving around on this graphics tablet while I'm doing this feels comfortable. What I said right at the start about the feel and the aesthetics of everything that's going on here, it just feels right. It feels good. It's really hard to explain it, but it feels right. I like to play with the texture and clarity here and there, affecting the sharp looking edges. It's a way of affecting the sharpness without affecting everything else that's going on. It's affecting certain pixels based on their color value and their exposure values. Texture performing on smaller details and clarity performing on larger details. So I'm going to do that. I also like to bring the vibrance up a bit and saturation down a bit just to see what happens, and I quite like that. So I'm already noticing some things that I'm going to deal with when we get into Photoshop. So let's just open now and get straight into that. So using the quick keys, I can zoom. But when I'm zoomed in working on something, if I hit that right button that I programmed earlier, I know it's going to put me back to fit in view, to the keyboard command 0. And you can see my left hand here is working on the quick keys, and my right hand is holding the pen over the tablet. I'm not doing anything with the keyboard. I'm nice and comfortable, working quite ergonomically on this image. To move myself around the image, on Photoshop I've got my bottom button set up to be the hand tool. So I've set a custom keystroke and set it to H for the hand tool, so that I can press the bottom button and get into that tool. I can then use the custom quick keys to do any zooming. Click the button in the middle to do any rotating just on the view. Click the button again, and in other apps I might be scrolling or I might be doing something else, and then back to the start to the zoom tool. If I want to navigate around the image, I've set the bottom button on my pen tool to be the hand tool. So when I click on it, the hand tool appears and I can move the image around. When I'm zooming in, it makes it easier to find a specific image or to realign the image to how I need it to be. And I can zoom back out with the quick keys, or I can just press my fit in view button on the tablet. If I switch over using the quick keys to my spot healing brush, I can start to address any issues, any sensor dust or anything like that that I want to remove from this photo. Using the tablet, it's all quite intuitive. Moving it around is quite easy to find these things. And we've got a fish farm here. This boat docked on the edge of this fish farm is just a slight distraction, but it's a distraction we're going to deal with right here. So let's zoom into this area, move around using the hand tool, and then select the spot healing brush to remove the boat. Now you'll notice that my pressure is set with this brush size, and that's all I'm going to get. If I cycle through my quick keys, I know that the last one is going to increase my brush size. So I can get rid of this larger distraction much easier. I can then keep the brush large and use the pen sensitivity to get rid of more finer details such as this fish farm itself. Go back to the hand tool with the bottom button, move across, and then using the quick keys I can reselect my spot healing brush, and we can try and get rid of all the fish pens here in the water in the Faroe Islands. It's a really easy process, it's intuitive. Using the quick keys and using the pen just feels natural, it feels like the right thing to do when we're working on images in such a creative way. So another thing I might want to do with this tool is just remove part of the detail of my license plate, because I might be posting this on social media somewhere where I may not want people to know the details of my van. So I'm just going to mix it up just like that by drawing over it from this zoomed out distance using a very light pressure with the spot healing brush. There we go, we're mostly gone. What I'm demonstrating here is not the correct way to use the spot healing brush, but the sensitivity of the pen on the Xencelabs tablet. So now I'll cycle back to my zoom mode, use my hand tool to move to the license plate, and then reselect my spot healing brush and just work out the remaining details so it doesn't look like such a mess. It's worth remembering at this point that the number of pressure settings and tilt options that we have on the Xencelabs tablet far exceeds, almost doubles, what we have with Wacom. And having that strong, reliable connection combined with these pressure settings, zoom back out here, gives us much more flexibility and much more option, and it gives us a more natural feeling. we can navigate around using the pen just as we would with our mouse, but we're not using our mouse. We're getting used to the look and the feel of the tablet itself. But we're not using our mouse, we're getting used to the tablet and the pen tool itself to really get into this and to work properly as photographers, to give us a more natural feel as we work throughout all the Adobe software and many other pieces of software. Something I want to point out is when I spoke about the machine learning of the auto function and the auto button, that machine learning from Adobe Sensei has now been applied into neural filters. So while we're here in Photoshop, we might as well quickly talk about some of the things we can do. So you've got the image over here on the left hand side, and we've got all these neural filters available to us. And I'm going to go for depth blur. I'm going to switch it on here. I'm going to put the van as the focal point. And we're going to allow Adobe Sensei to analyze this image and to create some blur in the background, which it's done there already. It's done brilliantly. This is all through machine learning and AI tech, and it's the kind of tech that Xencelabs employs to figure out how the pen responds and what the pressure settings are. It's had loads and loads of input to reach the settings that it's now refined at to work so effectively, which allows us such precise control over the sliders when we're using them with the pen to get them to a specific point. Whereas if we're using a trackpad or a mouse, we're quite often not exactly where we want to be. When we use the pen to slide the sliders around, we can be incredibly precise, just like I'm being here. You can see digit by digit alterations. Let's go back down the other way. Digit by digit alterations that we wouldn't necessarily be able to do if we were using a trackpad or a mouse. Just as a matter of interest, what's happening here is Adobe Sensei is applying a depth map to the image. It's figuring out where it thinks the depth is by surveying what the subject is of the photo and different elements of the photo. It's applying a depth map in the same way that when we upload a portrait mode photo to Facebook, it applies a depth map so that it gives us that parallax effect. That same kind of depth map is being applied here with the depth blur filter. So I'm going to keep that. I think that's a good look. We've now got our image selected, so I'm going to cycle through to my second option on the quick keys, which includes deselect, and instead of Command D, I've got a one button thing all in my hand, so it's all accessible and it's all easy for me to use, easy for me to get to, and intuitive. So that's a quick example of the flexibility and the control that we have when we're using the Xencelabs tablet with Adobe Photoshop. And it's important to us as photographers to have that creativity, to have that flexibility when we're being creative. That's the way I want to put it. We want to have that flexibility so that the work we're doing feels natural, so that we're not worried about how we're inputting, but what the actual result is. This takes it all away, and it feels natural, it's fluid. Our workflow is therefore improved. We're being more productive, we're being more creative, and we're getting better results. So let's jump back in and have a look at Adobe Premiere and how this works for us. So let's fire up Premiere. Here's one of my YouTube videos from my Due North series that I did last year while I was traveling around the Arctic in this van. Using the pen tool, we can be extremely precise, as you can see here, when we're scrolling through our timeline. We can also be extremely precise with this bar, the scrolling bar at the bottom, and we can scroll precisely through our timeline to find anything we're particularly interested in or anything we specifically need to work on. So as I scroll through this Northern Lights time-lapse footage, I can be incredibly precise with the detail that I'm looking at. As you can see here. Frame by frame by frame, rather than trying to guess by clicking on a mouse and moving and then clicking on the next spot. I can hold the pen and move through like a scrub through the timeline. And just like with a mouse, I can click easily on any other clip that I want to add into the footage. I can use my buttons on my pen to bring it into the preview pane. and there we can see I can find the right spot and work incredibly effectively at adding extra footage. We can set the 40 customizable quick keys to perform any function that we want. And I'm going to remove that footage with one click of a button with the undo button on the quick keys. So I'm pointing out to you the things that a tablet does incredibly effectively. But here's an exercise I want you to try. When we write on a piece of paper, it's normal, it's natural, everything looks great, everything looks fine. But when we write with a mouse, for example, it doesn't. When we write with a trackpad, it doesn't. So what I want to do is I'm going to put the pen down and I'm going to write my name using the trackpad in Photoshop. Bear with me. Nearly there. There we go. Right. Dave, or Dukv, it says. You can see that was quite tricky. It took quite a long time. But when I'm using the pen on the Xencelabs tablet, I'm getting an accurate representation of my own handwriting. I can change the style of my handwriting to make it look better, and it's far easier and more legible than when I was writing with the trackpad. It's this psychology and this mechanism of intuitive writing which translates to intuitive drawing and adjustments when we're using Photoshop or any other program that backs up the fact that we need a graphics tablet. If you don't have a graphics tablet, you should absolutely be using one. It just makes sense to be using a pen. Let's go ahead and change the brush here, and we're going to use a, there we go, soft round pressure size from the general brushes. When I use the tablet, you can see as my pressure changes, so does the shape of the brush. So when I write my name with this pen, it looks far better, far cooler than it does when I'm using, let's go with this brush with the trackpad. Oh, I'm using the same brush. It's giving me one pressure option, the maximum pressure. It's not giving me any other options. But when I'm using the tablet, we can see I'm getting a much better result. It's more intuitive, it's more natural. It makes sense to be using a Xencelabs tablet to do something like this, rather than to use a trackpad or a mouse. We hold the pen naturally. We hold it between our fingers, we rest our palm, we've got the incline of the front of the surface of the Xencelabs tablet, and it's a much better feel than holding a clunky mouse in this strange orientation trying to draw and navigate effectively. So I'm not just talking about writing your name or drawing, I'm talking about using your computer in general. If this big thick pen is a bit too much for a situation, you can always change over to the thin pen from the box from Xencelabs, and you can draw in exactly the same way. We've got what genuinely feels like a thin, light pencil that we can use to navigate and use to draw. And you can utilize all of those thousands of levels of pressure, of sensitivity to pressure. So when we switch back over to the picture of the van, if we were to do some more work, like removing these fence posts using the spot healing brush, we've got a far more refined control. We've got perfect ergonomics because it's designed to work in the way that we work when we're writing or when we're drawing. I'm not sure if I've compelled you yet to look into the idea of investing in a Xencelabs tablet, but it's absolutely something you should do. As I mentioned before, when we're using such an ergonomic tool that's designed to work for us, we're working smarter and we're achieving a lot more. We're getting the most out of our time. Isn't that awesome? We're getting the most out of our time and getting much better results with a more intuitive way of working. Everything suddenly becomes a lot more refined than if we're using a mouse or a trackpad. Everything that we do suddenly becomes more effective, and we're maximizing our potential as photographers, and we're maximizing on our time, because as we know, we are time poor. Our photography and our editing is a fraction of the time that we actually have as photographers, because we're concentrating on everything else. We're concentrating on marketing ourselves, reaching out on social media, networking, engaging with clients, getting new clients on board. We're looking at boring things like administration, we're looking at finance, we're developing our website, we're changing our portfolio, we're doing all this stuff that isn't creative. So when we do have that time to be creative, we need to be able to use that time incredibly efficiently and effectively. And this is how we're going to do it. We're going to use Xencelabs, and we're going to use a graphics tablet so that we can get the most out of everything that we do as photographers. One other thing I need to talk about very quickly, I talked about the battery life of the tablet itself and of the quick keys, but what about the pens? Well, they don't need to be charged. They just keep going. You can change the nibs, or you can add the felt nib, which is what I have on the thin one, or the regular nib, which I currently have on the thick one. But that's all you need to do. Everything else just works. You don't need to recharge it like you do with an Apple Pencil, for example. And with a lot of the other brands of graphics tablets, it just works. It's connected, there's magic going on, I don't know what it is, but it works. Something you may need to get used to when you start using a graphics tablet is the screen mapping. When we use a trackpad, we pick up in the same place where the cursor already is, just in the same way that when we're using a mouse, we pick up in the same place that the cursor already is. But when we're working with a graphics tablet, the tablet itself is a representation of the screen. So if we go, you can see the cursors up in the sort of center top of the image. If I then go to another point on the graphics tablet, the cursor jumps to that position. We're getting an accurate representation of the screen, as I said, in 16:9 format, getting the entire screen into the working area of the Xencelabs tablet. And that might take some getting used to, but it's worth getting used to it because it's a much more effective way of working. The reason having a method of working that is essentially screen mapping, the reason it's such a good thing, something that is worth getting used to, is because we're already used to it from working with paper. When we pick up our mouse and place it somewhere else and move around, and the cursor stays in the same place on the screen, that isn't representative of what we're used to with pen and paper. So if I pick up the pen from this position and place it in this position on the tablet, it's the same as picking it up from a piece of paper and moving it to another point on that same piece of paper. It's a much more effective and much more intuitive way of working. This isn't a lesson on how to use a graphics tablet. What it is me explaining why I've switched from Wacom. I've had 4 different Wacom tablets and they've all let me down, to Xencelabs. This tablet right here, with its quick keys, its 3-button pen and its thin pen, assortment of nibs, the incredibly strong Bluetooth connection, are perfect for what I need as a photographer and what I think you need as a photographer as well. Wacom, the Wacom tablets I own are currently under the bench and they're going to be going in the bin. I have absolutely no use for them anymore because this thing that's burst onto the market in 2019 is outperforming everything I've ever seen and ever used. The Xencelabs tablets are incredible. They're well worth the investment. You can see that the price is way better than the Wacom equivalent. I'm going to go with the Wacom Intuos Pro as the equivalent here. The price of the Wacom is $350 and the price of the Xencelabs is $360. But bear in mind that you get with that the quick keys that you can use to optimize your workflow, that you can customize to exactly what your requirements are, whether it's a predetermined program or whether it's a custom keystroke that you've put in yourself. You can work far more efficiently and effectively than you could with the equivalent Wacom tablet. So I'm just going to close this window, to be quite honest. If you go to DIYphotography.net, you can see I've written this up determining that Xencelabs beats Wacom. There is definitely a clear winner. This article, DIYphotography.net, by me, Dave Williams, on September 30th. Some of the things that I've discussed in this article are the things that we've mentioned now, but I'm just going to pull this excerpt here. Using Xencelabs tablets just feels like better than any other graphics tablet I've used, making a massive difference when using my pen on a tablet. I want it to feel smooth yet retain a little resistance, as if to feel like paper. Xencelabs has achieved this. In this article I've put Wacom and Xencelabs head to head, and I've also shown Glyndewis doing the same thing, and we've both reached the same conclusion: there is definitely a clear winner. Using Xencelabs tablets feels better than using any other graphics tablet I've used. It makes a massive difference to feel this way. When I'm using my pen on a graphics tablet, I want it to feel somewhat smooth but retain some of the resistance so it still feels like paper. But I want it to feel natural at the same time, and Xencelabs has achieved this. There's several other graphics tablets on the market from several other brands, but every time I've tried one, including Wacom, I've found myself stopping because of some kind of a gripe. Sometimes it's an inconsistent feeling on the surface of the tablet. Quite often it's a glitch in the connection, the smoothness and the reliability of the connection. But in the 6 months that I've had this Xencelabs medium tablet, the bundle with the quick keys, I haven't had a single problem. None of these things has happened, none of these issues have arisen. And it's largely, the connection is to do with the Bluetooth 5 connection, which is stable and secure. And the feeling of the tablet itself and using the tablet comes from the fact that everyone that works at Xencelabs, that designs and builds these, is a creative of some sort, has experience in photography or visual effects or graphic design. These designers and engineers and developers have really pulled it out of the bag to build an incredible product, to be quite honest. They've broken free from the restrictions from their previous jobs, and in forming Xencelabs and creating these incredible tablets, they've really set the standards quite high, whereas everything was just sort of trickling along. Xencelabs has gone and smashed it out like the speedboat steaming ahead. Another concern that I've talked about that I'm going to touch on again is the battery life. So the wireless Xencelabs tablets, you can connect them to USB or USB-C to use them wired, but using them wirelessly, we have an incredible battery life, and this battery life far exceeds what you get from Wacom. 53 hours on the quick keys, 53 hours, and then 16 hours on the tablet itself, and those both coming from less than a 2-hour charge. It's incredible. Looking specifically at the pens, the 3-button pen and the thin pen that we have from Xencelabs in that beautiful case with the replacement nibs. These pens are, they have the customizable buttons, but they also have a soft touch silicone grip. They weigh next to nothing, and we've got approximately 60 degrees of a pen tilt range and over 8,000 levels of pressure sensitivity. As I said earlier in this little talk, that's twice as much as the 4,000 odd levels of pressure sensitivity that the Wacom pen with the Intuos has. And then going back to the quick keys, the quick keys come with the medium bundle or the medium bundle SE, or they come as an additional accessory at $89. But here's the thing, there is a show special with the Travel Photography Conference. If you go to B&H, you get a special deal as an attendee of the Kelby One Travel Photography Conference, and B&H are the official reseller, authorized reseller of Xencelabs in the USA. So you can get yourself the quick keys as part of a bundle with the medium tablet or the medium SE, which is the white version, for an incredible price, just for attending the Travel Photography Conference online. Back to the quick keys though, I got distracted there. They are an excellent interface, and this OLED display showing each key's function it makes it easy to work. It makes it intuitive to do certain things, and once you learn where the commands are, as you've set them up yourself or you're using the predetermined commands, and once you've learned the zoom and the tilt and the scroll functions of the wheel on the side of the quick keys, it makes everything so much quicker and easier. As I said, we want to be as efficient as we possibly can, because as photographers, we spend a lot of time doing things we don't want to be doing, and it leaves less time for the creativity. The Quick Keys pad doesn't replace the buttons that we had already with other tablets. We've still got the buttons on the pens, we've still got the buttons on the tablet itself, but we've got the added function of the Quick Keys with the 40 programmable commands and the 4 programmable dial commands. If we're going to get a great quality experience out of a graphics tablet, we need to have a great graphics tablet. We need to have an experience that isn't going to put us off using graphics tablets, and we need to use an excellent tablet to do that, and the Xencelabs tablets are truly excellent. They were designed, as I said, by people with relevant experience within the industry as artists and as creatives, and that's resulted in something that is matched to what we need and delivers precision and reliability that we need to ensure maximum workflow and a great experience. We need to make the most of our time, and everything has been considered so that we can maximise on our time. We've got great efficiency, we've got great shortcuts, and we've got an incredibly thoughtful design. Whether it be with the medium pen tablet or with the small pen tablet, we achieve everything we need to achieve, and Xencelabs has given us the power to achieve everything that we need to and want to as photographers. The point I'm trying to make here is that Xencelabs has been born out of a lack of functionality in other brands of graphics tablets, and the people that formed Xencelabs understand our needs and our requirements. They understand what it is to be a creative and the functionality that we require from using a graphics tablet rather than using a trackpad or a mouse, and the fact that it just needs to work. When something just works, it hits differently. If something just works and you don't notice it working because it's working so effectively, there are no hiccups, there are no bumps, nothing's failing, then it's doing its job perfectly. Xencelabs tablets don't have any of those hiccups, they don't have any of those bumps in the road. They just work. No connectivity issues, everything feels the way it should feel, everything functions intuitively, and especially with the use of the Quick Keys, we can get a lot more done in a lot less time. Xencelabs is definitely the way forward. Whether you're looking to get a tablet for the first time, or whether you're looking to replace the tablet you've already got, Xencelabs is the way to go. I've made the switch, as I said several times, from Wacom to Xencelabs. I know Glyn Dewis has done the same, I know Dave Clayton has done the same, I know countless other photographers and Kelby One instructors, graphics designers are making a switch from Wacom to Xencelabs. And I'm not saying that Wacom's bad, what I'm saying is Xencelabs are incredible. They do their job perfectly. These are excellent tablets, a very worthy investment. You get a lot for your money, and you will notice the difference switching over to a Xencelabs tablet. So that's essentially all I have to say about Xencelabs today. I just wanted to give you a very quick demonstration of how easy it is to use this system, how it comes together so quickly, fits into a small package, is perfect for me as a travel photographer that's always on the move. And when we're done, we can pack it into this pouch, just like a laptop sleeve, and travel around with it, transport it around from place to place. It's a fantastic product in a fantastic package. It looks the part, it's designed perfectly to work for us as creatives. Ladies and gentlemen, the Xencelabs tablet.
Xencelabs.